Take me back to my little grass shack in Calico, Hawaii. I want to be with all the Connies and Wahinis that I used to know so long ago. I can hear the guitars playing down at the beach at Honau now. I can hear Hawaiians saying, Ikoma mai no koa o halevaka'au. What? Breakfast with Bob. Oh, yeah.
Pancho Man. Another round of applause for our man, Pancho Man. We are presented by ES Sports Nutrition, Cliff Bar, Timex, Roca, Tanyapura Resort, Rudy Project, and Slow Twitch. Our guests, Mr. Sean Astin, star of stage and screen. We're talking Rudy. We're talking Goonies. We're talking Lord of the Ring. And his coach, Matt Dixon. I'm on a round of applause for Matt because he's the main man here. Matt.
Thank you.
You've got how many athletes participating here?
The rumor is 32, so and plus 2 pros, so
right.
I guess 34.
34 athletes. And how many of them did you find out maybe 4 months beforehand that they were thinking of possibly doing this race?
Well, it's my dream to never find that out. And, but when Ironman approached me and said, we've got a guy, and
We've got a guy,
and he's never really done a triathlon. He has ridden a bike a few times, and
he's run some marathons.
But here's his chance of glory, and he actually said, Sean Astin is going to do Ironman Hawaii, and I said, which year? And they said 2016, or 2015, I should say. I'm already ahead of myself.
You were thinking 2016.
I was hoping 2016, and I said, well, it's going to be a challenge. Let's see what happens. So
then you got to see him swim, bike, and run, and what were your thoughts?
When we had a first conversation, and Sean's obviously a charming man, and
yes.
We actually got along great straight away. Maybe it was the British in me, but he was cynical and made lots of fun of me on the first call, so I thought it was going to go really, really well. And I saw him, I encouraged him to meet up with me, and saw him swim, saw him bike, saw him run, and the sort of first impressions was that he basically swims like a drunken sailor, and didn't know how to ride his bike, and he certainly ran like a donkey dipped in cement. So I thought, well, this is going to be a
match made in heaven,
and it has evolved. But we'll talk about that.
So, Sean, talk about you've got a running background. You've run for how long? Well, you ran in here. Take this thing.
Sorry. Okay, so my running life, I started when I was 14.
Yeah.
But it's erratic. But I consider myself a long-distance runner my whole life. Not a fast runner by any stretch of the imagination, but I've run 10 marathons and, I don't know, probably 50 half marathons and countless 10Ks and 5Ks and ran cross country in high school and stuff. So, and if you look at the miles, I kept my miles for like 10 years. I have all my miles noted, and when I'm doing 150 miles in a month, I'm skinny and fit and trim and just looking exactly right. And then 2 months of that I get hurt, drops down, and I don't do anything for 4 months, and then I build my way back up, and then it's a 30
roller coaster.
It's been a long roller coaster journey, but supposedly that's my best discipline in the triathlon, but I'm like, I don't actually have a best discipline. The transitions, I'm not even good at transitions, but
how hard has this been? Because you've, like you said, you've got a marathon when you do a lot of travel. You're working on films all the time. You're, I'm sure, going to Comic-Cons and all the type of thing. Yep. If you're running, you bring a pair of running shoes, right? If you're doing triathlon, you bring a Sherpa. You got a bike. You've got to find a pool. There's a lot of stuff, right?
It's another $70 with Southwest Airlines to get the bike on the thing.
Exactly.
No, you know what? It was very, very obvious that there would be no way to do this without expert guidance, without a real coach.
Yes.
And I was training for a little while before they identified Matt as the right guy for me, and found out that Matt would take me on. Every time I train for a marathon, I get hurt.
Right.
I get hurt somewhere between 2 weeks and 4 hours before the start of the marathon. And without fail, it's an IT band, it's a calf tear, it's a this, it's a that. Every kind of, just like a typical middle-aged guy who vacillates in weight. And so it was obvious that I needed to get through it without getting hurt. And then I didn't know. Do you do all disciplines in a day? Do you do one a week? How many miles? How many hours? How many? What's it like to actually be in water? All these kind of things. So getting put together with Matt. By the time we got on our call, I was actually in Niagara Falls doing one of these things, and I had landed, found out where the YMCA was, the aquatic center, went there, came back. There was no bike that day, but I was going to do a half marathon, and we got on the phone, and I was just so hungry for instruction. Yeah.
I'd say that the biggest challenge with the process was that Sean did need to lose some weight to really be ready to be able to go and do this thing, and the biggest challenge is the compressed time frame to do it, and to enable him to develop not just the sort of the fitness and the resilience to actually go and do this thing successfully, but also to be able to drop a little bit of weight and then most importantly stay healthy.
Yes.
And we had to do all of this while integrating it into his life. We couldn't just dump it on top of his life, and so it was a real puzzle. And the one hesitation that I actually had was, it's Sean Astin, and is he really going to be able to commit to this?
Yes.
Because it's a nice aspirational thing to go and do, but when you actually sort of show up, and ultimately, as I say, when you're dressed in your Speedo standing on the pool deck, no one cares who you are. And so is he really going to show up? That was my first question. And,
when I dress in a Speedo stand on the pool deck, I get paid for it, and people compliment me for years afterwards.
Here you dissipate into the crowd. But the one thing that I can say is that he's sort of gone on this journey, and I made a joke earlier about how he swam, bike, and ran. But the one thing he has done, and I say this with a completely genuine mindset, he showed up. And we have a word that we use at Purple Patch a lot, gumption. This boy's got a lot of gumption. And despite the crazy schedule, he showed up. Right. And so sort of fast forward 4 months, now that we're a few days before race day, he's going to make it. I'll put it out, the guy's going to make it. And at the start, it was touch and go. And
yes.
He's going to make it, and he's going to make it, I think, very well. And because he really has prepared. And I mean, we can say one of the things that I'm most proud of is we've got him here healthy. And I thought that was really, with all of his injury history, to be able to go and do enough riding. He honestly didn't really know how to ride a bike. His first bike ride that he did under my tutelage, he went and rode about 50 miles, and he said it was fantastic. It was in the hills of LA, so it was hilly, but it's fantastic. It took me 5.5 hours. And I thought, goodness me, that's going to be a challenge. He's now ridden 56 miles in 3 hours. So. Wow. So we've had a significant...
That was a great day. I felt like a rock star that day.
And
then I went and did the same 56 miles like the next week and did it in 3:40. So I don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. I really did commit to it. I knew I'm old. I'm 44 years old, and I've done long distance running. Like I said, I've done these marathons, and I know what happens. I know how it feels, and I know what it takes. And it was very clear to me that if I was going to do it, that it had to be a priority. And so I'm at a stage in my career where, the industry knows who I am. And
right.
Every now and then I'll get a great phone call, and that'll mean a big job. And every now and then there'll be a great opportunity, and I'll have to fight to try and get that opportunity. But a lot of the time, the jobs come in, and I can take them or not take them. I turned down a bunch of work during this process.
I'm sure.
And I made an auto reply on my email. I've never done that before. I actually went into preferences and learned how to do an auto reply, and the auto reply was, "Hey everybody," and this was 2 months out. "I'm training for Ironman Championship Kona October 10th, and it's going to take me a long time to get back to you, so I apologize." And like that,
wow.
And I wanted to send that pulse out to anybody and everybody who tried to communicate with me that like right now this is my intention. And when I would go places and people would ask me, "Hey, what are you working on?" They want to know, are you going to do another Adam Sandler movie? Are you going to do this? And I'm like, I'm working on this triathlon. And it takes a little bit of, like mental recalibration when they see somebody who doesn't look like somebody who could do a triathlon, say that. And I actually think that's why they want me to do it.
Yeah. What have you learned about yourself through this process?
Well, I've learned my limitations.
Yeah.
And they are distinct. The hardest part of this, I think I confirmed for myself that like when I set my mind to something, I do it.
Right.
And even if it's painful and not fun, I do it. And there's been a lot of this process. It's been fun and great, exhilarating, thrilling, but there's been a lot of it that's been painful and not fun. And you wake up and you just don't want to drive 45 minutes to the swim group at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
But I know that if I don't, that guy, the coach, Jerry Rodriguez, was like, "You can't do this. You can't do this." Or he didn't say I can't do it. He said, "I'm not sure you can do this. I'm worried because." So then we did a fuel injection of swimming for 2 weeks. I was swimming every single day, and it's hard. So, but I learned that the mental fatigue is the hardest part of it.
Yes.
It's really the hardest part, way more than the physical. That and like balancing nutrition. Nutrition's just the bedeviling thing of my life. But just how do you stay focused on the thing you're supposed to be focused on? Remember, once he started giving me information, and Paul Buick, who works with Purple Patch, was, I came out here to Kona for 4 days, and we were training in the 110-degree heat and 40-mile-an-hour wind, and he's giving me just data, tons of data, and it's a lot. I mean, I'm a good student, but my head was swimming by the end of the night. And then you go out the next day and you try to apply this stuff, and you're lucky if you remember one thing. I don't know.
And from a runner's perspective, let me one more question for Sean. From a runner's perspective, a lot of times runners run, period.
Yeah.
Have you found that the swimming and cycling have helped you running?
No question about it. No question about it.
Were you surprised about that?
No, I think because your legs get stronger when you cycle. I mean,
Right.
there's just no question about that. But no, you feel great when you get out of the water, and you're a little more taut. I find, and my shoulders are bigger, and something when your shoulders are not like, I'm not weightlifting, but in I can carry myself.
Yeah.
Your carriage is a little stronger. No, I think I was pretty fragile. I did the Dopey down in Disney World.
Yes.
Which is a 5K, 10K half full in a weekend thing, and that was great. But by the end of that, I was kind of wrecked. And then I put it together a little bit to do my version of a marathon for the Boston Marathon with Dave McGillivray, put me on that, and the legendary race director, who's the reason I'm here too.
Exactly.
But I honestly think it rehabilitated me.
Yes.
And I'm still fragile. I really need another. It's only been 4.5 months. I need a couple more months just to feel like I can run comfortably and drop a little bit more weight. But yeah, there's no question that helped my running. There's no question.
So Matt, when you have a condensed version of time to get somebody ready for this, you obviously have to leave some stuff out. What have you left out? And knowing that you're 3 days away from this thing, what does this week look like?
Yeah, he said he wanted 2.5 more months, but he's got 2.5 more days. But it was an art. In some ways, you have to sort of you have to leverage what he has. And what I felt like he had is there's a certain cardiovascular fitness you have to get to. But if you just try and train for the marathon, I knew that he would get injured. So
Right.
there's a really, as you sort of asked before, there's a really good cross-pollination that occurs with swimming and cycling.
Yes.
And so we went very swimming and cycling focus, and then almost strategically with precision had him run frequently to try and strengthen the tendons and ligaments, but did less really long running
Because he's done that.
because he's
Mentally,
done
he knows
that.
how
He
to
already
run
knows
out.
I
it.
was so relieved every time it was when I would look at the progression schedule that he would put forward to me. I was just so relieved there wasn't more running on it.
Yes.
Because I just knew I would get hurt, and we didn't really talk in depth about that. But you knew what my injury thing was. That's the amazing thing with Matt is I explained everything in a phone call, and he took it in, and everything that came back at me. A lot of times you have to explain things to people over and over again, particularly. Athletes, there's 2,000 athletes. Everybody's had this injury. Everybody's had that. Keeping it straight, keeping it straight. Who has what issues, and being able to calibrate for that, I was incredibly impressed with, and grateful and relieved. Honestly, relieved that he de-emphasized running for the first 6 weeks at least.
Yeah, and I think the other portion of it for Sean is trying to give him some familiarity as well. There's a massive emotional component to it. And so one of the sort of non-negotiables, I said, you've got to go to Hawaii. You've actually just got to spend 2 or 3 days on the island. And I sent Paul Buick, my assistant, and he did a tremendous sort of, and I think that was a watershed moment because he realized that what the elements were, what the swim is like, what the bike conditions can be like. And that reset his mind on this is what's necessary. Sean's done more bike riding in the dark than any other athlete getting ready for this race because the way that life, you would get texts, and Sean loves to text, but I would get texts. I'm heading out on my bike ride, and it would be 4:30 in the afternoon. I was like, well, I prescribed him 4.5 hours, and I'm going to bed, and I get a bing, and it was great, just finished. And so he has a lot of war stories from the hills of LA because it was just integrating into it. And then what you have to do is build sleep and recovery and nutrition around that, where it was not a normal athlete progression. If you looked at Sean's program coming in, it was very, very different than Meredith Kessler's. I promise you that.
Well, and the other side of it is when you're talking about, okay, we want to get your weight down. At the same time, you don't want to lose strength. right? You've
Absolutely.
gotta. You can't just go. Okay, most times if you've got a year, let's get the weight down first, and then let's build up swim, bike, run. You got to do it at the same time.
I had some help. I had a little bit, not a little bit. I had a lot of help. Exos, the company Exos,
Yes.
that trains the LA Galaxy
Right.
and tons. They got facilities all over the world. I went in and Denise there, they did a whole body composition profile on me and movement. They just dissected me, and it was like a 6-hour process. And then they gave me a bunch of information. And the biggest thing was she's a dietitian, and her title goes on for a lot of things. She's an expert food person. And then we got a company that delivers food to you. So honestly, I don't know that I would be ready right now if it wasn't for this service. The bag would come, I'd wake up in the morning, eat on the schedule, and it just kind of did what it needed to. So it's an advantage that a lot of people don't have. But the critical thinking that goes into food preparation, if I had to really add that in, I would not in this short amount of time, no.
And I think the one thing that's really, really important, because it applies to all, is so we're looking to reduce weight, but the one thing that was non-negotiable is to make sure that he was fueling the workouts, and particularly the recovery from the workouts, because it comes to injury as well. And so I tried to integrate on top of that small habits. So every single workout had to be followed with fueling. And we had a very different mindset over the calories that he was eating around workouts and then the rest of the day. And I think with that combination, and the other thing as well, when Sean started, he said, I need to be 35 pounds lighter. And I said, you don't and you can't, because you will be injured.
Right.
And so 15 to 20 was the goal, and we accomplished that goal. And that's still a short time period to do that.
To lose 15 pounds,
But we managed to do it safely, and he's here healthy, both hormonally healthy, like he's not sick, and he doesn't have any injuries. And that I think that's the best catalyst to have a solid performance, is what I'd say.
So Sean, I'd be remiss if we didn't ask some acting and movie questions.
Oh, okay.
Recognized the most still for Goonies over everything you've done?
Shockingly so. 30 years ago, what Dick Donner, the director, called a fun kids picture.
Yes.
Is when you pull up Apple TV, it's one of the top recommended movies everywhere I go. I find it shocking.
Was there a period where that had sort of disappeared from the consciousness and then totally came back?
Yeah, it's come back
New
in the last
generation.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
With a kind of zealousness. I think it's, I don't know exactly what it is, but the generation of kids who were, in the mid 80s, in their, 12, 13, 14 years old, we're all a certain age now, and I think there's a nostalgia component to it that, people just say to me all the time, man, that movie is my childhood. That movie brings me, I watch 2 seconds of it, and it brings me right back to, wherever I was at that time. Yeah. So, that's pretty, and it's so dated. Like, I watched it with people in Boston a couple months ago, and I just thought it's so kind of the grainy quality of the film, and like all the cars are old and it's dated, but it's got a whimsy and a joy to it that is it's just undeniable. So I would have thought Lord of the Rings, that made $4 billion literally $4 billion theatrically, would be the one thing, and it's actually the most. My 3 movies that I'm most known for are such perfect metaphors for this Kona experience, and Rudy's probably the most so, because it's all about grit and determination for somebody who does not have the athletic gifts, that you would think you need to have in order to do this kind of activity, but who's wants it so bad that they're going to fight for it and try and do it. That story is pretty powerful. But also Lord of the Rings, the whole 3rd movie is about going across this volcano to get rid of this evil ring. And like, we really are going to traverse this, there's 2. And one volcano's bad enough, there's 2 here. But like going through the lava rocks, I actually, when I was landing here during the time when Matt instructed me to come here, and I saw that volcanic landscape for the first time, something changed in my heart. I just was like, I could live there. I could live there for the rest of my life. I could never leave. It's so, there's such a cleanliness to it, and its desolation. And so and that was Sam Weiss-Gamgee's experience.
Exactly.
I just need Matt to carry him up the hill at the end there.
and the connection with Rudy, like you said, the person who,
with Rudy, you're talking about Rudy, young Rudy.
Young Rudy.
Yeah.
The connection with young Rudy, because Rudy Garcia-Tolson's double above knee amputee, who Sean actually early triathlon days at the Malibu Triathlon. Actually, Sean, Rudy, and Rudy would carry Rudy out of the water.
Yeah.
And they did triathlons together. Yeah. And there's photos of.
I did 2 or 3.
Yeah. Of
sprints, little sprints.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I did those sprints in 96 or something like that.
Something like
Somewhere
that.
right in that little area. And Rudy was just this golden, poetic being, and watching his, absolute. It wasn't even determination. It's just him. It's just the way he is,
He's
and
changing the world.
Yeah, change and not for any other reason than he's doing what he is meant to do. It's extraordinary to watch. But I've gone into the water with a scrum. I know what it feels like to legs kicking in your face and people swimming over you. So when I got the letter from Ironman up in February or something like that, or whatever it was, and I looked at it and I said, honey, it was like Rudy getting into college, getting into Notre Dame at that moment, because they wouldn't have asked me if they didn't. They're not going to set you up for failure, Right. But it's an epic thing. So I walked in and showed my family, look at this letter, and they're like, oh, here goes Dad again. Like, what's this next
what's
thing?
this
What's the
knucklehead
next
thing?
thing? You just did the dopey thing, and you did the Chicago Marathon and the LA
Boston.
Marathon. How many can you do? And Boston, exactly. So my wife looked at me and she goes, well, can you do that? And I said that. And I quoted this in the newspaper the other day. I go, there was not one single shred of doubt in my mind that I could accomplish this task until I started training. But I said yes to her that I thought I could do it because I had done that sprint with Rudy.
Yes.
And it has been in the back of my mind that, it's not a totally alien concept. It is weird. You go into water with them, and I did a 70.3, and I did an Olympic length, as a part of the training for this, and a few half marathons. So,
How'd you do your 70.3? Did you feel good?
I felt at the end of it. I mean, it was 7 hours and 25 minutes.
There you go.
So in his world, it's like they've already gone out, had dinner, and seen a movie and come back. But I felt great at the end of it. I mean, I really felt like it was just getting started. The run was hard for the beginning. My Achilles were hurting, but at the end, my fastest 2 miles were the last 2 miles. So I
love it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Hey, you know what, Sean? It's great to have you in our sport. What it does when a celebrity comes to the sport, it brings eyeballs to a sport that a lot of people don't know about, and a lot of people will realize, you were running, and now you're doing triathlon, and triathlon actually makes you a better runner, right? It changes lives.
I just want to say that 99.9% of the people out here, 90% of the people out here have earned their spot.
Right.
They're here because they are elite competitors in their age range. They've, everybody, your audience knows what they had to do to get to be at this place. I was invited, so it is never, ever far from my mind that it is an absolute privilege to be here. And I want to make sure that people in the triathlon community, I've watched this race for years on television with awe, so I know what this is. But I want everybody to know that I am in awe of their talent. I'm trying to learn from them the best I can, and I just want to be respectful for that position. Having said that, it's a weird thing. The reason Ironman invited me is because they thought, I would be an interesting story for people who haven't done it. So when you talk about Ironman Kona, it's a championship. It is an intensely competitive thing. And the hue that comes across in the TV show is not necessarily welcoming to the everyday person. But the everyday person might have a place in the world of triathlons.
Yes.
So I'm trying to navigate this interesting space between respecting the competitive excellence that I'm confronted with and the idea that there should be an openness, and outside of the pure gamesmanship that goes on here, it is just as loving and accepting a community as the running community.
No question.
And so that's been a gift. And you to bring it back to Purple Patch, I've been surrounded with greatness, and I would never have been able to, if I'm able to do this, which I think I'll be able to do it, I would never be able to do it without the kind of support. And Matt and Purple Patch and his team, Paul, and they've just been, and his wife, who the logistics and she's an incredible partner. But thank you for everything you've done to help me get to this place, Matt.
What do you think it's going to feel like coming down Ali'i Drive. Like you said, you've
I
watched
want
it
to
for
do.
years.
I actually have everybody. Crossing the finish line moment.
Yes.
Okay, is a moment, and some people do like a backflip, and other people they dance and everybody
Yeah.
cries and everything else. You want to see how I want to finish
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
I want to. You saw this yesterday. This is exactly how I want to finish it if I can do it.
Oh yeah. Let's see if we can get it on camera here. Yeah.
It's stunning.
I want it to be like this. That's it. That's it. That's how I finish every marathon without fanfare. Thank God I made it. You know, the closed loop thing, because, you know, yes, they do have official time and you can look it up online, and the online people have been watching streaming and everything else, but I want my watch that I carried with me all 16 hours and 57 minutes to look at and go home and stare at it in the car on the way back. So it's about the watch, and I know what this is. It's like, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the one thing I did tell Sean that I think anyone that's doing this race for the first time, I gave Sean the advice. There are two parts that it's very easy in the scrum of this race to have it bypass you. And I think that the one thing I told Sean is when you first get in the water and the anxiety is there. I said, get in, make sure you get in early enough to just be able to stop and turn around and look at the setting and shift your mindset from goodness me, can I do this, to say this is pretty cool. And it's wonderful, and immerse yourself in that experience, because that can set the tone for your day. And then the second component is whatever happens out on race day, when you come down that finish chute, it is, and I tell all of my friends that don't do triathlon, one of the magic things all in sport is the last hours of the Ironman Hawaii finish line. And so wherever you come, whether you're first across the line or you are scraping in to get in under the cutoff, don't let that moment bypass you, especially when it's your first time, because you'll only ever have that one time. And he's going to express that by going,
Yeah.
but inside there'll be a lot more.
We'll see something totally different. How about a round of applause?
That's what I said my plan was. I didn't say what's actually going to happen, but
It's just a long
that
catered
phrase,
workout.
you know
Remember
what I
that.
love about marathons is the medal.
Yes. Oh.
I have no idea, and I literally will put the medal in my mind. You know, for LA Marathon, I ran towards that medal I did it 4 times, LA Marathon. I would run towards that medal in my training every day. I would think about it. I would dream about it. The medal, that's what I used as my carrot. I have no idea what the medal looks like.
It's beautiful.
Because for me, finishing isn't about the medal. It's about that sentence that gets called out that I can't say. It's that, you know.
Exactly.
I met him yesterday, and he
Mike
started.
Riley.
I met Mike yesterday, and he started to say it, and I was like, please don't. I'm going to start crying. Like,
Love that.
Yeah.
Sean Astin, Matt Dixon, thank you so much for taking time. A round of applause. We again are presented by ES Sports Nutrition, Cliff Bar, Timex, Roca, Tanya Puerto Resort, Rudy Project, Slow Twitch, Poncho Man. Take us out.
Take me back to my little grass shack in Kealakekua, Hawaii, where the humu humu nuku nuku apua go swimming by. What? Where the humu humu nuku nuku apua go swimming by with breakfast with Bob. Chee-hoo.
Poncho Man, everybody.
Got it.